my title is Magid, which is a person who tells, like a talker, a professional talker, a professional Jewish talker. I like the translation of preacher because I think that kind of encompasses a lot of what I do. But it boils down to stories and words, and how words and how stories end up saying more than they say. Always loved like the squirrely nature of Torah, the wateriness of it, the fact that like anybody who, I mean, even the greatest of the great, Jewish sages would say, if you think that these stories are meant to be understood literally, you should be astonished at yourself. You don't go to a restaurant to eat the menu, which literally tells you what the food is all about, right? You go to experience the food. I wanted to talk about where we are, because we're in this sukkah, and I wanted to just share with you like the little, I mean, there's very little in the Torah that talks about this place that we're sitting in right now and how to do it. So I brought it out for that, and also because being in a sukkah, part of what we do in this funky little space is study. Like the idea that that studying is this adventure. It's a pathway to new ideas. It's a pathway to understanding more about ourselves and the world around us and each other. So it's a traditional thing to have some some study materials in the sukkah when you are in it. The way that Judaism approaches text, Torah text, is we read the whole thing, that it's cyclical. We read the whole thing throughout the year, and then we get to the end of the year and we go right back to the beginning, right? And I think of it as totally like a spiral, not like a racetrack, because every year you read the exact same words. And yes, if you're going to a shul, if you're going to a synagogue or part of a community that does it in a traditional kind of way, there's ritual that goes along with it. There's blessings you say. There's a flow to the way that it's read, and there are tropes, there are musical notations that go along, so it will sound the same, or daily Torah sounds a little different than special readings, or special holidays have got their own music that go with it, so you can instantaneously tell where you are. All of those ritual items to locate you in community and in time. The beauty of ritual is that it can kind of like say, okay, let's walk across. It's only 5 feet, but let's walk across it, right? Whether it's your wedding, or welcoming your child, or saying goodbye to someone that you love who has died, or celebrating a milestone of maturity, or whatever it is. That those rituals come into play to help us get back on the tightrope, to walk between this state and that state. Like this is my wedding canopy. So when we walked under that, when we came in from outside as two individuals, we were two individuals and we were not married. When we left it after ritual took place, we were married. We were different. Something happened. We had effected a transformation. And I think that my interest for the last 22 years of doing congregational work was a lot of the work that happens in a congregation is ritual. When they're done well, and most rituals that we know of, even badly done, will probably elicit a tear or two. So how much more so when we are in ritual space that is both attuned to what has been and what is right here, right now, right? To like take the wisdom of, yeah, processional, good idea. It just moves people. There's just something about somebody walking into the next part of their life that's a symbol. People get it. There's that universal thing that transcends religion, that takes a spiritual impulse in human beings, transcends the words that are going to be spoken, the clothes that are going to be worn, with a cup, without a cup, break a glass, don't break a glass, light a candle, don't light a candle. All of that is trappings but there's something about that spiritual impulse to witness somebody changing that I would argue is on the side of spirituality. And then we all have our little different ways that we've come up with for how to do it, that we would call religion. You know, text is static, at least in Jewish tradition. The words are going to be the same every time you come back to them. You don't change these words. This particular text is immutable, unchanging, and eternal. But we're not. And the brilliance of having us read in this cyclical way, again and again, the same text year after year, the same bundle, the same order, or like working your way through week after week by the end of the year, and then immediately looping, so it never stops. So the end and the beginning are, they are undefined. This is the constant, but we aren't. And wherever we were when we read it last year, we are going to bring that year's worth of growth, change, loss, gain to these words. And all of a sudden, things that I've been doing this for a long time, and I will read it this year and go, wait a minute, I've never seen that before. Where'd that come from? What are you talking about? I've never seen that before. I never saw it. I read it. I know I read it, but I didn't see it because it didn't mean anything to me, apparently, with wherever I was before. And all of a sudden, it pops. And I think that's what ritual should do. Those kinds of rituals, those rituals that are ongoing. Reading Torah is every day if you're on that path. Certainly every week and year after year after year. So very repetitive. So that's a whole different kind of ritual. How do you maintain a connection to something that happens with that kind of regularity? The genius of this was built in. You will stay connected to it because you are unconnected, because you are falling apart and coming together constantly, right? We are never the same year to year. And some years are bigger than others. Some years there's been a transition in our family, in our identity, in our belief system, in our physical health, that completely radically changes the way that we see these words and these stories and these laws and these examples. Something that didn't speak to us at all last year, all of a sudden is like a life raft this year. And one of our practices in my family is like we bless before we eat, always, always. Like I do not put anything in my mouth without taking a pause and making a moment of recognition that, there's a great world around me that allows me to even do this. You can rattle it off and not think about what you're saying, or you can use that as a moment where it's like, no matter what else is going on, I'm going to take a second and gear down and not let this go, for granted that I just get to grab an apple and eat it. But that a tree grew the freaking apple, and somebody took care of the tree, and somebody picked the apples, and somebody packed the apples, and somebody schlepped the apples, and somebody did all of the accounting at the store that I bought it from, right? All of those things that go together that you can actually tap into by creating a ritual around eating it instead of just being hungry and eating. When we're doing ritual for those reasons, you're awake. And I think the point is kind of being awake in our lives.